Yeah, I'm short, I'm sorry.
No, you're allowed to be short. You're allowed to be short. I'm going to read from my new book, which is printed since I last saw you guys a month ago and is available on the table there. It's called From Earth and Sky, and it's a collection, or it's a retelling of Norse mythology in poetry. I need to explain a little bit, I'd like to explain a little bit of what I'm trying to do here, because it's quite an unusual piece. Firstly, I want to write my poetry in something like the way it was done originally back in the 6th, 7th or 8th century, which is alliterative, and it's not about rhyming. Okay? But more importantly, it's Norse mythology, Thor, Odin, Loki and all the others that you've all heard of. But when you go back to the sources, Icelandic sources, Danish sources mostly, you discover that there are all sorts of hints of stories that aren't there because we've lost the piece of paper. It went up in smoke in some house fire somewhere. Or because it never got written down because everyone thought it was obvious. Or in some cases, it actually got written down twice in two inconsistent ways. And I've been trying to reconstruct a few of the stories that got lost. I also tell some of the other stories straight, but I've been trying to reconstruct some of the old lost stories. And I'm going to read my telling of a story that doesn't exist in the literature. It's my retelling, my reconstruction of the story that doesn't tell in the literature. And it's about Loki and Odin and another person you may not have heard of called Hernia. So Loki, many of you know, he's a treacherous fire god. He's a god of fire. You may or may not know he's the son of Farboti. That we don't know anything about Farboti. The name seems to translate as dangerous smiter. And because Loki's a fire god, my guess is Farboti is lightning. And Loki's mother is called Lofi or Nal. Lofi means leaf island, which is, one guess is it's a cunning way of talking about a tree. It's a leafy island in the middle of a forest. Nal means needle, so it sounds like it's a pine tree. We learn at some point in the literature that Loki and Odin are blood brothers, but we don't know how that happens. And Loki and Odin go around as a trinity with this other person called Hernia. We know almost nothing about Hernia, except the name seems to be the same word as the English word hen. So Hernia sounds like a bird. Hernia also sounds like he's got something to do with the night. And we know that night, as a Norse goddess, weds Anar, which literally means second, and Anar is another name that's given to Odin. We also know that Odin is the creator of and the chief of well-known English folk legend, the Wild Hunt. And this is to do with Odin. Odin is a wind god and is associated with ravens and wolves. Okay, so what I've done in this piece is try to put all that together to try and explain how Loki is born from lightning and a tree. In other words, the lightning hits the tree and it sparks into fire. And how they become blood brothers, and I say brothers in a very tongue-in-cheek manner because all three of them have a hermaphrodite quality, and I try and tell the story that we don't know. Okay? I'll warn you a couple of things. I use a couple of archaic words. White, meaning a person, you probably have heard that one. Height, spelled H-I-G-H-T, means name. It's a verb to name someone or to call someone by a name. And I use the words Fjolnir and Ballegre, which are alternative names for Odin. So my piece that I'm going to read is The Wild Hunt. In the forests far to the north, the sky stirred up stormy shadows. Luckless Laufey by lightning was struck, tree-bane fashioned from fearsome fire fright. Needle-tree gnarl, the name of that pine, Farbauti storm smote her stems. Laufey's leaves lit up with fire, learnt she love for flaming Loki. As they sparked fire in that far-off forest, wind-white Odin went wildly by. Fanned he the flames with furious frenzy, sparks soared and fire roared. And this fire by Fjolnir set free, strengthened and spread. Trees smouldered, Ballegre blustered, blew the trees blight, and Loki laughed, leaping tree to tree. The wild hunt whipped up wild wolves and ravens, ferociously galloping to fire's frenzy. Clamorous calls clanging in Mirkwood, the ravaging, raucous ride of the hunt. The mad chase magnified, multiplied more, wilder and wilder, warlike, unhinged, flame flash through, the forest was fanned by raven wings, wolves and Odin's wind. And then it was evening. Night's dark feathers fell over the forest, over the wasted, smouldering woodland. Singed embers simmered, smoke subsided, the earth heaved a sigh of release. Hernir's night bird wrapped dark wings around Odin's Zephyr and Loki's flames, their eyes still burning with lust and destruction, randy and raunchy, rejoicing in the chase, and they embraced. Odin, aroused by the fanning of flames, by Fuck's fuel, and by Loki impishly egging him on, coquettishly kisses and copulates with the bird. Thus it was that Odin, Windlord, and Hernir, Longleg, took on the shape of birds and mated. There were once two birds begotten of boar, fair and pitch their feathers fashioned. Hernir was that supreme stork, Odin was the wild wind raven. As Hernir Longleg languidly looks on, the awesome eagle arches its flight. The wild one whips up the wind, the carefree couple copulate. Hence the hen bird, Hernir height, wedded once the wild wind white. Longfoot lays an egg of life, Hernir incubates the egg of the world. The brothers did then bend beneath an arch of turf, supported by spears, cutting their biceps, bled their blood midst the fresh dirt to mingle in the mound. Held hands and swore to support each and all, one for all and all for one, brothers in arms to banish the bogeyman, a trinity to be faithful to that which is true, Odin, Loki, and holy Hermia went out to explore the inestimable earth, set out to study and set things aright, set out to make Midgard for men. Here's another one.
Yeah.
Please. Okay, one more about, this one's about Loki and Loki, well, it's arguable whether he fathered 3 offspring or mothered 3 offspring. I personally think he mothered 3 offspring. It's one of those hermaphroditic qualities that he has. But these offspring were horrendous monsters. So this comes a little bit later in the story, and I'm going to tell you about Loki and his offspring. Loki was good looking, but to the gods a disgrace. His abode was in Asgard, protected by Odin. His spouse was Sigyn, and Nari their son, but he was always abroad playing one of his pranks. The time came that Loki was expecting offspring. Some suspect that Loki's kids were sired by shadowy spirits, the hag Angrboda, but I've a hunch it happened when he ate the heart. Inevitably, in Ironwood, Loki's infants arrived. When these ghouls grew, the gods were aghast. For nothing so fearful had any fellow foreseen. 3 monsters to make all others seem mild-mannered. No mortal children were they, but amorphous, allowed to assume their own embodiment, according to their own evil attitudes, to scare all folk feckless with foreboding. The first, Jormungandr, took the form of a snake. Odin flung him overboard into the ocean, where he flourished and grew to gargantuan size, encircling the country with tail in his chops. The second, Hel, took the hue of a human, half of her healthy, the other half dead. Quick on the right, a corpse on the left. Sinister, you'd shudder to see her, as you shall. Odin dispatched her deep below Niflheim to preside like a duchess over the domain of the dead. There she presides, her palace is sleet cold, her platter is hunger, her knife it is famine. The third was the Fenris wolf, who worked himself wargishly. He ate, and he prospered, progressively ever more powerful. He is the harbinger of heaven's high doom, Ragnarok, when he shall swallow the sky. It was urgent that Fenrir be arrested, made the gods lathing, that unbreakable leash. When he tried it for size, the strong one snapped it with just one shake of his stupendous back. Next, Aesir fashioned the fetter called Dromi, quite a bit stronger, but the wolf had grown too, and when it was fitted, Fenrir rippled his flank, and Dromi dropped off him like drapes of damask. More was needed, a magical manacle. So Old Father sent Skirnir swiftly to Svartalfheim to forge a new fetter, to forge Gleipnir that might hold Fenrir for the foreseeable future. The Svartalfs sent Skirnir to collect some sweepings, the noise of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the nerves of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. When these were all found, the forges they fired up, the hammers they did clang on the anvils all night, made they a skein of singular string, which, said they, would work as required. The Aesir and Vanir assembled with Fenrir on island Lyngvi in Lake Ansvartnir to test his strength and try the new string. But Fenrir feared the gods were fooling him. He said, "You said you see how strong I've become and brought us here for the binding. But what's in it for me? I'll hardly be famous if I can show I can snap that string. Or maybe there's magic you've not mentioned. How do I know you're not lying? By your honour, prove to me your trustworthiness that this isn't a trick. Tyr, you will place your arm in my jaw as we play this game of power. And if you're honest, and if there's no hoax, all will end up all right." Nervously, Tyr places his arm in the jaw, but Fenrir growled, "Not that arm, O Tyr. Your sword arm is the one you ought to offer if you expect me to trust you at all." Then they fitted the fetter on Fenrir, tied it down and told him to test it. The wolf roared and ravaged, but could not wreck it. So he was bound, and Tyr lost his arm. Thank you, everyone. I've got copies of the book if you'd like to have a look at them in the next interval when it happens. And thank you ever so much for listening.